President Obama getting ready to bypass Congress again. This time, it's climate change. The Obama administration working on brokering a climate change agreement with other nations, but without ratification from Congress. And that's not the only problem. The president's plan is based on the honor system. And Senator Rand Paul joins us. Nice to see you, sir. Is this an abuse of power by the president?
Not only is it an abuse of power, I think it's almost leads us to a constitutional crisis of sorts. It's one thing after another. You know, he says he has no choice but to act. He says he has a pen and a phone and he's going to act. That doesn't sound like our republic. You know, we have checks and balances. He's done this with global warming. He's also done this with immigration. He's also done this with the war in Libya. He doesn't seem to grasp the checks and balances. But if we don't have checks and balances in this country, you know, that can lead to a real problem. I
have two things that sort of are curious to me. One is that for the first 2 years of his first term of presidency, he had the House and the Senate. So why didn't he do that? He could have gone through the constitutional process and had the House and the Senate. I don't know if he could have got it ratified in the Senate, any treaty, but he had a very sort of a welcoming environment on Capitol Hill. And the second thing is like the honor system is that even if he does sign this, I don't get where the teeth is. It's like, I mean, the honor system when I was in the 5th grade just meant everybody got A's.
Well, and the thing is cap and trade we rejected. The House rejected cap and trade. So now he's going around democracy. He's doing sort of an end around Congress. And you can't imagine that the American public would let him do this or that we would let him do it, frankly. So I hope that we will see resolutions and legislation and actual legal action. You know, I support Speaker Boehner's legal fight to say, you know, the president can't just do what he wants. He's not a king. He has to really get approval from Congress.
But does he ever even call Congress? I mean, you know, he's making this decision, but has he gone to the Senate? Have we heard that he's gone to the leadership to say, let's sit down and talk about this?
No, I've tried to communicate with him, and I called him a couple weeks ago to talk about repatriation, letting companies bring home their profit at a reduced rate so we could get money to come home. There's $2 trillion sitting overseas that I said could come home and create jobs, and I called him and asked him for his help. But I really didn't get anywhere.
All right. On your trip, and I'm going to get to your trip in 1 second to Guatemala, where you were not Senator but Dr. Rand Paul. On your trip, at least one time, your quote is saying that former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, I think you referred to her as a war hawk.
Well, you know, they call the war in Libya Hillary's war, and it's led to chaos. So I think we ought to think a little bit before we get involved in war. We now have an ambassador that's been assassinated. We have the embassy that had to flee overland, couldn't even leave by the airport. We have jihadist groups everywhere, and I think we're less safe as a country now with the chaos in Libya than we were when Gaddafi ruled the place. And that doesn't mean Gaddafi was a great guy. He was an autocrat, a dictator. But we had some stability, and we have less stability. So I think the country has to ask themselves, if Hillary Clinton's going to run for president, is that the kind of decision-making that we can expect? Is she going to create more chaos by getting involved in more wars in the Middle East? And I don't think she fully grasps really the repercussions of what she created in Libya.
All right, let me talk to Dr. Rand Paul now. You were in Guatemala. Why did you go to Guatemala?
Well, for years I've been seeing kids from Guatemala. There's a Guatemalan neurosurgeon in my town in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and he'd been bringing the kids up, and we've been operating on them for about 15 years, and so I thought it'd be neat to go down and see them there. So we went down with a team from University of Utah, and we did about 200 cataract surgeries, and I was able to visit with some of the kids that I had done surgery on 15 years ago.
One, of course, was Yulia Estrada.
Yeah, she was exciting to see. She was a really pretty little girl. Now she's a beautiful young woman, and I was able to straighten her eyes. And when we went down, we were able to get her some glasses, and she was able to see 20/20 with glasses.
I was struck by when Hernando Lopez, his wife, left him when he went blind. I thought that was like, it's bad enough he's blind, but his wife left him because of that?
His was the most dramatic case we saw. We saw a lot of happy people, but this man was ecstatic and overcome by emotion. He'd gradually gone blind for 3 years, lost his job as a truck driver, lost his wife, lost his kids, lost 40 pounds. He was emaciated, and he was being taken care of by a young man from a church. And he got his vision back, and he was so excited and thought, maybe I can get my job again. Maybe I can get my wife back again. But it was really just, we were all overcome with emotion seeing his response.
So they're just cataracts to the point that they were blind?
Yeah, some could see light perception only. They could tell light on or off, but not enough to walk around the village, not enough to do any work, definitely not enough to drive. That was the majority of the cataracts, dense, white, mature cataracts. And that's why the vision is so when you take off the patch the next day, the response is so dramatic.
It must be really fun. I mean, don't you sort of miss that full time? I mean, like it must be fun to give someone his vision
There's
back.
no reward, more dramatic than seeing someone sit up and say, "I can see."
That is amazing. Anyway, Senator, nice to see you. Welcome back to Washington, and obviously a very successful trip down in Guatemala.
Thank you.